There is none like you. Hello and warmly welcome to Christian Connect on ETV Ghana, your world of quality entertainment. And my God shall supply all your needs according to his riches of glory in Christ Jesus. May the Lord himself supply all your needs according to his riches, according to his power, according to his kindness, and according to his mercy. Thank you so much for joining us today on Christian Connect. Let me say thank you so much to Osasio Fashion for providing my outfit. You can always check out Osasio Fashion on Instagram. They are there as Osasio_fashion. And you can also check them out on Facebook, Osasio Fashion. You can always give them a call on 0243 663 884. Osasio Fashion says, style your occasion. And the Bible says, where there is abundance of counselors, there is safety. And these days you do hear a lot of pastors saying, come for counseling. We are having consultation and counseling. So today on Christian Connect, we'll be looking at the importance and impact of counseling to church growth. And we have a great man of God with lots and lots of experience to help us deal with this topic. So stay with us as we take a short break and come back to start the conversation. This is Christian Connect, and we are looking at the importance and impact of counseling to church growth. And to help us do that is a great man of God. He's been a pastor for over 39 years, and he is the president of the College of Counseling and Psychology. My guest today is Professor Samuel Oheneba Donyo. Prof, welcome.
Thank you very much.
I hope I got the name of the school right. Where
exactly.
Yes. So what do you do? The College of Counseling and Psychology.
We train counselors, and if you want to be a counselor, you need to necessarily learn some psychology, because you should be able to understand the nature of people and why they do what they do from the biological perspective, from the psychologist perspective, all of these groups together to shape an individual to become a counselor. So we are accredited by the Ghana Psychology Council to train people who can get licensure to become people helpers.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yes, you know, for some time now, a lot of people have paraded the corridors and called themselves counselors. Unfortunately, they have misled a lot of people, misguided a lot of people by their advice. And so government, by an act of parliament, enacted a law 2013 under the Health Professions Regulatory Bodies Act, where the Part 5 of that law is what established the Ghana Psychology Council to be the agency that should see to it that people are practicing any form of applied psychology in a regulatory manner, in the appropriate manner. So that law is now with us, and anybody who violates it does not get license to practice. It's not has not attended an accredited institution for the courses that are supposed to be run for purposes of licensure, commits an offense.
Wow.
And can be punishable by imprisonment or to a fine or to both. And because of that, it has become very necessary, because most of the counseling we see takes place in the church, among church members. And most you can see on the screens of the TV where the advert is rolling for prayer and counseling. Call these numbers or come to us. So the council want to see to it that counseling is properly provided according to the regulations that borders it. So that is what we are training people for.
To do. Wow. I don't know how to even continue with it, but since we've started from that point, let me continue by saying that you just mentioned that we see a lot of adverts on screens, come for prayers and counseling. So if you are licensed or you have the authority to punish people who are not proper counselors, then what do you do about these pastors or people who invite people for counseling and perhaps they don't have the license to do so?
Okay, thank you very much. We do not punish. We cannot punish anybody. We are just an institution, a training place for counselors. But the law has been put in the hands of the Ghana Psychology Council. They are mandated in the interest of the public to ensure that they protect the public's interest against charlatans and against people who are professing to be offering any form of counseling or mental health practice in Ghana. They are regulated to do that. But we are just mandated and have been given the courses that are required for training for purposes of licensure, and that is what we concentrate in doing. And our school, our vision is to train counselors who will be able to heal a hurting world. There are a lot of people hurting in the society, a lot of people, especially within the church. The church, you know, is an institution that was established by Jesus himself when he paid the price and bought the church, you know, on the cross when they pierced his side with the sword, and then water and blood came out from his side. That was when the church was really birthed. And so he gave his life and paid the price for the church, and the church has to be that perfect image of Jesus Christ. And so within the church, things must be done right and done excellently well. The people who become members of the church are called out once, as opposed to a word that is commonly used, a Greek word of ecclesia. Ecclesia is not the church. Ecclesia is just a gathering of people. It could be for political purposes. It could be for any form of gathering, you know, for entertainment and so on. But those who belong to the church are the ekkaleo. They are the called out ones who are called not to return to the world. And so for such people, Jesus is the head, and that the church forms the body. And so everything must be done and done rightly. And so if we are advertising, pastors are advertising and asking for people to come for counseling, at this time you cannot just use the word counseling. It has become a regulated and a controlled terminology. That if you want to apply it to yourself, you want to hold yourself up, or you want to apply whatever knowledge counseling is all about, there is a regulation that borders it, and you have to be trained so that you can do just what is right and help people the right way. Government wants people to be helped. Every problem that people have is not necessarily a medical condition that requires medical doctors to deal with using medicine, deal with the anatomy or the physiology of people. And similarly, the problems of people are not always spiritual, requiring deliverance prayers or the preaching from the pulpit alone. There are also psychological aspects to the problems of people. Mental health actually is about emotional, mental, and psychosocial problems of people. And it must take experts, people who are trained to be able to manage it.
Wow. Well, I think we've gone a bit far, but I think I want to come back and perhaps for us to start from the scratch. First of all, when we say counseling, what is it?
Well, counseling, there is this authority. He's called Gary Collins. He said that counselors are trained professionals, people who use the skills they have acquired, the knowledge they have acquired, And he is a Christian, so he also adds to it that the help of God, and by the help of God, are able to use their skill and their knowledge to help people who are stuck. They are stuck somewhere in life. People are stuck in their addictions. People are stuck in their wrong beliefs. People are stuck in their attitudinal problems. People are stuck in their negative thinking. And because they are stuck, they have become stagnant. They can't move forward. They can't go back. It is affecting them. And unfortunately, we seem to live in a continent where everything that people don't understand that is happening to them, they simply mystify and try to say it's a spiritual problem. There is an old lady somewhere. There is a witchcraft somewhere. There is an ancestral spirit, a demonic stronghold that is preventing the person from moving on. Yes, in some cases, certainly there must be some spiritual undertones. But majority of the problems that people go through, they cause it themselves. They got stuck in that place. And when they get stuck, unfortunately, they don't know how to get out of the place.
How do I distinguish between the fact that perhaps I'm having a certain psychological problem rather than a spiritual problem? How do I know whether it's spiritual or psychological?
First of all, we have to approach things from a fundamental point of view first. And if we don't find any reason for it, then we can say it's spiritual. So somebody is going through a problem, he has to see the psychologist. They have a way of assessing the situation and running some tests, psychological tests, to be able to see if this thing falls within a certain jurisdiction which can be classified as a psychological problem. But if none can be found, and the medical people can also not find any cause why a thing like that is happening, both the psychologists and the medical people can find, then we can resort and say that probably spiritual. Let us look for help from God, power from God to be able to diffuse that particular thing.
But these, say, the medical and the psychological, these can also be caused by spiritual beings, isn't it?
Oh, certainly. We know that there are some psychological issues and there are some medical issues that can be caused by spiritual forces. But the majority of the problems that people go through are human engendered, auto-engendered, where they cause their own problems. People got themselves stuck there. And so if the psychologists and the medical people cannot find any reason which is treatable, then we can say this is spiritual. For example, we call something personality disorders. There are certain personality disorders that were formed as a result of certain developmental deficiencies and problems from family background, from upbringing, and some kind of issues. These personality problems can be maybe some wickedness that people have, which is not caused by an evil spirit. People are kleptomaniacs, they steal every little thing, which may not be caused by spiritual forces. Unfortunately, if this is not understood by many people, they cannot tell why this should happen, then they simply classify it as a spiritual problem and start dealing with it. But I can tell you, these are things that falls within the scope of psychologists to be able to manage. If you get the right person, the qualified person, they'll be able to diagnose it. And once it's diagnosed, the treatment is there.
We will be looking at the various problems and how people will even get to know that I have this problem and I have to go for counseling. But you just mentioned about kleptomania, those who steal. But let's take somebody who drinks, for example.
Yes.
And is it a psychological problem?
Yes.
Because somebody will say that, the witches have put some pot in your stomach. So is it not spiritual rather than what you say psychological?
Well, there could be a spiritual basis for it, but we don't go there as the first option. You need to see the psychologist to be able to run some tests addiction itself is a very powerful something. It starts with gradual experimentation to some things. And anything that people experiment with, if they seem to like it, they enjoy it, they are likely to repeat. And when that repetition keeps going on, then they become dependent on the thing. And then a cycle of addiction is established. So alcohol, use of alcohol or drugs or certain behavior patterns and so on can all be as a result of some dodgery that some people are playing. Dodgery here, where you don't want to be responsible. So you pretend and try to dodge by faking a certain appearance, behavior, so that you can escape that responsibility. If it works for you and gives you some momentary gratification or payoff, you are likely to repeat it if you find yourself in a given situation. For example, you are angry when you are being confronted for something and you realize that what they are saying is the truth. Then you flare up and become angry, and just to cause people to be silent and not to, it becomes a dodgery. It paid off. So next time you find yourself in a given situation, you will apply the paid off until people become fed up with you and they will no more take it. So you amplify the payoff and regularly use it as a defense mechanism to help yourself. And then you become dependent on it. It becomes a pattern that you have developed constantly, and it's unacceptable. And a problem becomes a psychological problem or a counseling problem if it is causing you a problem and is creating a disharmony between you and the environment and other people, and is also affecting your performance, job performance, family life. Everything in your life is completely out of equilibrium, is out of balance. You can know that something is not good for you, it's affecting you. Then you must seek help. So to the question you ask, how will I know that this is a psychological problem and not a spiritual problem? If you are beginning to see that you are out of tune, you are out of balance, and you are doing some things that is affecting you and affecting your relationship, creating disharmony with your environment, then you need to seek help automatically. And in seeking help, it will always be good to see the psychologist first or the counselor first. And if they are trained, they will be able to take you through some tests. And if they don't find anything, then they will refer you to the next level. Go and see the medical doctor. If the issue is more of a physiological thing, go and see the doctor. And if you go and the doctor sees nothing, and the doctor here can be a psychiatrist or anyone, if they don't see anything, then they will tell you, this one, they pray hard. Or go and see your pastor.
I see. You see, that was a question I was going to ask about who is supposed to go for counseling. But it looks like you've mentioned a bit about the situation or the kind of problem that when you find yourself, you should go and see a counselor or a psychologist
for that matter.
Yes. Right. So who actually is supposed to visit a counselor or a psychologist? Who?
If anybody, anybody who is having a psychosocial, emotional, some behavioral problems and so on, should go. I mean, we are all not perfect. So if you see that you are having any of such problems and you are unable to deal with it, you are overwhelmed by it, then it's good for you to seek help. And I will always encourage people, don't stay for too long. It's like with a medical condition, if you stay too long and taking some concussions and some, they call it some traditional medications and so on, your situation becomes worse. By the time you get to the hospital, nothing can be done. So if you are having a psychological problem, a psychosocial problem, you are having a relational problems, and so a behavioral problems, your emotions. You are not happy. You are sad most of the time. You are easily irritated. Your understanding to things, the meaning you give to things, unfortunately, does not match up. Then you need to go and see a psychologist or a counselor for that matter to see how they can help you. But I also like to say that there are different types of psychologists. The general word is psychology because it deals with the mind and how the mind thinking affects people's feelings or affects their emotions, and that produces their behavior. But there are different types of it. And the principle that they are applying in working is called talk therapy. They talk to you. And in talking to you, if you give them the right information, they ask you the right questions, you help them, then they will be able to help you unlearn and unwind some of the patterns that you are within, which is causing you a lot of problems.
This is Christian Connect on ETV Ghana. My guest today is Professor Samuel Oheneba Donyo, and we are talking about the importance and impact of counseling to church growth, and it's been very exciting. Let us take our verse of the day, our memory verse of the day, and we'll be back to continue with the conversation. This is Christian Connect on ETV Ghana, and today we are looking at the importance and the impact of counseling to church growth. And my guest today is Professor Samuel Oheneba Donyo, and he is the president of the College of Counseling and Psychology. And Prof, I think we've mentioned a lot about who a counselor is or what counseling is and who needs counseling. Now, let's go to the church setting. Why must counseling, for example, be part of the church?
Well, it's because people are within the church. And people naturally have people's problem. And like I said, preaching from the Bible alone or deliverance prayers alone may not be able to help the people. For example, somebody has a marital conflict or problem. You can come and preach. The Bible says people should not have those kind of characters or behaviors. Those sinful behaviors, they are not allowed. But how do you help the person come out of that? Yes, preaching is supposed to cause people to repent. Unfortunately, there are people who are so entrenched in their behavior that they think what they are doing is right. How do you really help them using the scientific approach to get them unlearn and unwind and be moving on? This is where counseling comes in. Parenting, for example. People want to get married, the premarital preparations. And even people have some addiction problems. We should be able to help them because they are in the church. Somebody is living in masturbation, for example. It has a payoff. How do you get a person to back off from that? You can preach, and the preaching will even make the person more guilty. More guilty, because the scripture is going to frown upon that. How do you help the person come out of drinking? Because the person is addicted to it, he loves it. Drugs. How do you help the person? This is where preaching alone is unable to help. So to be able to help people disentangle from their emotional problems, their psychosocial problems, their behavior problems, this is where the counselor comes in, because they've learned a lot of theories principles. They have learned a lot of therapies that can be used to get the people healed and be moving on. This is where it comes in. And I want to say that in the training of pastors in the seminary, there is a pastoral care and counseling that most pastors do. But pastoral care is different from counseling. Maybe they just touch on a little subject, you know, show people a few things and so on. So they call it pastoral care and counseling. That becomes a bit problematic because the pastor is trained to care
and
pastorally.
And the counsel, because it's pastoral care and counsel. So
pastoral care and advice.
Okay.
That is what should have been the word. Because if you want to add the counseling to it, that is entirely psychology. And there are a lot of courses that you have to take in order for you to be able to add the counseling to it. Unfortunately, not every pastor has done that psychology aspect to in-depth. So mainly, most pastors, because this is what is on the curriculum, call themselves, I'm a pastoral care counselor. But ideally, they should have been care providers and giving some biblical guidance and advice to people. And there's a difference between advice and counseling.
Prof, you mentioned a number of issues that people may be indulged in that preaching alone cannot tackle. How easy is it for people to walk to counselors and pour out the kind of problems that they are going through?
Yes, thank you. Hitherto, because of there is a certain stigma, you know, attached to the word. People have not trained properly, so they are not mindful of the ethics that govern the counseling practice itself. No confidentiality. You go and you share your problem, the next time it's being preached. So people have become a bit skeptical. And since then, not many people want to respect the counseling. But counseling is a profession. It's somebody's profession, like we have medicine. So now we have at least the orientation is coming. Society is being given the orientation that there is something called counseling and professionals are there doing it. So gradually, people are going to find out that they are safe. That if they take their psychological problems to somebody who is trained in that area, who is licensed in that area, they can get solution for it to be professionally handled. So very soon, people will start running and looking for such a help.
How can, churches having these professionals help in the growth of the church?
Oh yes, excellent. It will be very helpful because you would be providing a holistic health, where the physical aspect is being handled by physicians of people. And that is a broad area. Where the spiritual aspect is being handled by clergy. That is a broad area. It has a lot of things to do. Where the soul aspect, which in the Greek is the psyche, which has to do with the psychological aspect of people, the mind, the will, the emotions, the way people think, feel, and act. And you know what the Bible says? It says, as a man thinks,
yes,
so he is.
Yeah.
And these are also in the church. So you are going to realize that if professional counseling comes into the church now, an office is open in the church to attend to the psychological problems of people. People are not only going to receive their physical help from the hospital, but spiritually, they will also be receiving their spiritual help from the pastors, and then psychologically, counselors will be providing professional work. This is holistic work, and the church will grow from this angle, because if I come to you, the church, I have everything, a one-stop shop for anything.
These days, not these days, but like it appears anytime somebody says, I'm going for counseling and is at the church, it's all about marriage. And maybe they are going to get married. That's when they engage in counseling, especially at the church level. Do you think that all these other things must be inculcated in the church? And in that case, should church members pay the counselors for consulting them?
Okay. You see, in counseling, there are specializations. And if you are not specialized in a particular area, you are not supposed to be handling it. And if you are specialized in that area, you are licensed for it and recognized for it. So yes, counseling should be brought to the church. But if the people who are counseling are not trained professionals in a certain field of counseling, they will rather do well by referring to those people. So that if they are trained as marriage counselors, then they focus on that. But there are some of the churches that have the means to establish a practice, a kind of psychological clinic, where all these different aspects of counseling can be practiced, where they have the facility license, a licensed facility for provision of psychological services. You have there a specialist that can handle substances or addiction problems. You have there people who are in the area of marriage and family life. You have there people who do death and grief counseling. You have there child and adolescent psychologists. You have different people there. Then, why not? It can be done in that place, one place. But if the people are not specialized and the facility has not been licensed for such purposes, then the best they can do is, if it is not marriage and family, refer to those people who can handle it. Wow.
We are going for a short break, but it makes very interesting. You talk about if it's not family and marriage, then that one has to be referred. So it means counseling must be done in a certain kind of environment.
Yes.
Wow. This is Christian Connect on ETV Ghana. Let's check on our fact file and see what we have for you, and we'll be back to continue.
We are in the ancient town of Tsipori, an amazing archaeological discovery. When the Jews rebelled in AD 70 against the Romans, the residents of Tsipori said, we're not going to join the revolt, and instead they surrendered. So the Romans did not destroy the city like they destroyed other cities in Israel. So we have it today.
While Nazareth was a very small town in the 1st century, made of few hundred people that depended on farming, Tsipori was an aspiring town being built by Herod. So people like Joseph, who lived in Nazareth but was a carpenter, a builder, would have made his journey here every day, was 3.7 miles to be exact, and would have worked here. Herod would have needed all the working hands around here and all the carpenters and the builders to help him build this magnificent place, the jewel of the Galilee, actually.
You're also watching Christian Connect on ETV Ghana, and we are looking at the importance and impact of counseling to church growth. And my guest today is Professor Samuel Ohineba Donyo. Prof, so just before the break, we're talking about the environment in which counseling should be done. What kind of environment should it be done? And as I was asking, whether in that case, people who go for counseling at the church premises should pay something.
Okay, the environment which must be used should ensure confidentiality in the first place, so that whatever is being discussed between the therapist or the counselor and the client does not go out. There should also be certain furnishings in place where we have a place to keep records, you know, data, the files, and so cabinets that should be locked. There should be a place for people to be able to sit like a reception. There should be consulting rooms. There should be a place for intake, you know. There should be a testing room. There should be some toilet facilities. There should be a security man in case they are going to attack the counselor. You know, all of this is required. And professionals are those who are licensed to be able to practice in this approved facility that the psychology council would come to inspect and to license.
Okay, maybe you want to address the issue of payment?
Yes. Counseling is a profession, so if people are going to devote their time to help other people, it is just right that they should be taken care of or blessed. The amount, however, it depends on the regulator. The Psychology Council determines it. We also have a lot of counseling associations that are recognized. They can also come out with how much should be charged per services. But different specializations and what goes into people's work and so on determines how people should be charged. In the event of the church, where you have the counseling office within the church should create a budget, you know, to be able to take care of the counselors who are managing that particular place and spending their time, and give them something as an encouragement, as an incentive for them to be able to go ahead. And whether the people who go there to seek counseling or not, it depends on the church. If the church says, we will pay for it, we will support the counselors, it's a department of the church, then they don't pay anything. But if they are going to somebody's private practice, then they have to pay.
It's very interesting you talk about people regulating the amount in which people should pay, because I know some of these pastors, or like we mentioned earlier, when you go, sometimes you pay huge sums of money before you can even see the pastor.
Yeah. The Medical and Dental Council, for example, all doctors, depending on their training and experience and levels, have a fixed rate that cuts across. And so counseling too, like I'm saying, the regulator or they see to it to standardize the cost so that nobody pays overly above any standard price. Otherwise, that itself is a malpractice. It's against the ethics of the profession.
As a president of the College of Counseling and Psychology, what is the most reported issue in terms of counseling, people coming for counseling? What's the most reported in Ghana?
Paul, I tell you, it's marriage.
Wow.
And it's very troubling. It's not easy at all. And then parenting issues. These are the most reported. There are issues of addiction and so on, but they are not as prevalent as marital problems and parenting problems. And I always believe that, you see, people go into marriage with unrealistic expectations. They do not prepare. Marriage itself is a whole building, it's a whole institution. And the foundation is very, very, very important. The foundation must be properly laid for the marriage to be built on it. Otherwise, if the foundation is cracked, there is a problem. People have not had professional premarital counseling, then that alone is even recipe for troubled marriages, because they go in with certain understanding which probably is erroneous, and they will carry it through. So people must learn to invest money and time into doing proper premarital counseling. Go to professionals where you can pay and let them help you with tests that they will run and help you in a professional manner to lay a very solid foundation.
Prof, one issue that I think maybe psychology and counseling, maybe the church may also have their problems. I know the Bible, or some say, okay, the Bible does not permit divorce, for example. So in a church where it's strictly no divorce, and where there's also professional counseling, where there's maybe issues that the professional might think that, okay, there should be a separation or a divorce. How do they reconcile psychology and the church and the Bible, or everything together?
Well, there are various perspectives or theological perspectives on the matter of divorce. First of all, we know that marriage is permanent and there is no exception. But marriage is permanent except there are exceptions. Except where there are severe abuses. Abuse, physical abuse, verbal abuse, emotional abuse, sexual abuse, different forms of abuse that is threatening to life. Then that is an exception. So we also have where there is a severe case of substance use, a severe case of theft, burglary. So these are all extreme cases. Then also we have the issue of adultery and immoral involvement, including certain forms of promiscuity, infidelity, and so on and so forth. That is also an exception. Then we also have exception where legal issues are involved here, and so on, and somebody thinks that my life is in danger, I don't feel safe, and so on and so on. Then in that case, it becomes an exception. So people should not make the mistake and think we should be blanket about this, say there is no divorce, and so people are misbehaving, like that case in Nigeria. And the lady just died. And now everybody, wants to explain themselves in various forms. But we come so hard and don't allow people with their fundamental rights to sometimes make certain decisions. If you ask me, this is my personal viewpoint. Where there are severe cases of abuse and all these things and so on, I would recommend that people even separate for a while. But within that time, they can seek help. And if they seek help, they can come back together.
With the exceptions that you mentioned, it appears the Bible only talks about the infidelity, that's adultery.
Oh, God would not want his children abused. He won't want his children to be punching bags. He won't want his children to be at risk. There are some human beings who are having mental problems, but they are wearing suits. And some of them are even wearing clerical, but they have a mental problem. And these are very dangerous people because you can't tell when there will be a trigger, and that will result in the loss of life. God does not want that either.
And that brings me to another question that I wanted to ask earlier. We said that if you feel this way, you have to see a psychologist, or that way you describe a number of things that perhaps if you are going through, you should see a psychologist. But this is somebody who is wise in his or her own eyes. The person doesn't think he needs anybody, any psychology. How do you deal with such person?
That's very true. That alone is even a sign of a mental problem. when you think that you know it all, you don't have a problem, but you know you have a problem. That alone is a problem. So maybe doing talk shows, holding seminars in the church, talking about these things, and so we awaken people to identify with the problem areas that is being spoken about, and then the motivation, encouraging them, there is help. The fact that you are seeing a psychologist does not mean you are insane. It doesn't mean you are mad, so to speak. But there is help. You see the experts. They will be able to help you go through successfully without any challenge at all. Don't be too proud and think you know too well, because you can have a lot of problems.
You talk about parenting or marriage and parenting as one of the most reported cases, and you mentioned that maybe counseling is one of them. How do you think that this issue about marital problems can be tackled?
Well, problems about marital issues, first of all, conflict. Strong disagreement is the beginning of the whole thing, but conflict comes from various angles. Communication is very, very vital. People should learn how to communicate and communicate effectively without being entrenched, without bias, without, concluding on issue. Have an open mind. Let us talk about our problems. We are in it together. Let's resolve it so that we'll be happy. But if you are not able to do it, and many times when people are in problems, they should not make decisions. You need somebody, a third party, who can help you resolve it.
Right. Prof, this time our time is fast spent. It's time for us to go. But quickly, just your final words and the fact that sometimes somebody needs professional counseling and they don't even know where to go. Quickly, your final words and where you think that people can seek help in terms of professional counseling.
If you go to the associations, the counseling associations, you Google, you can see the associations and go through the leadership, the head. They will be able to assign you. Help is there. But if you also want to get good help, our school is a good one. If you come there, we will be able to refer you. Or we also have a consultancy there, services. We'll be able to handle you unless maybe the area of specialization doesn't fall within our jurisdiction, then we refer you. But there is help everywhere. Help in the hospitals, help in the schools, help in the churches. There is help. But make sure that if you are going to entrust your life to someone to help you with counseling, the person is a professional. The person has been licensed. Make sure you inspect that. It's your right.
Right.
Thank you.
Make sure to inspect that. It's your right. Thank you so much, Professor Samuel Ohene Donyo, and he's the president of the College of Counseling and Psychology, and he's been helping us a lot, and I believe that you've been inspired, you've been encouraged, and you know where to go now if you think you need counseling. And it's not everywhere that you should go for counseling. As it's been said, you need professional assistance. We thank God that we've been able to come your way again today with Christian Connect. In case it's been of help to you, may the Lord be glorified. My name is Paul Anumakodi, and God bless you for joining us today.